Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Jeffrey coming to you about thinking traps. So, as we are working through our biofeedback or neurofeedback, we have to, well, it's a good idea to start being conscious of the way we are thinking and the ways that we are thinking, in particularly, and how they are contributing to things like anxiety. So, this is a nice website, and this is a great resource for anybody that is needs to learn a little bit more about anxiety, called Anxiety Canada. It's a BC-made website that ended up becoming kind of the national representation of Canada, free information. So it's quite a good website. But I like their topic on thinking traps, and I'll also give you a PDF of this so you can look at it. Now, a lot of times when we are dealing with stress and dealing with more, our brain has a lot of automatic thoughts that are going on, and we can't detect these thoughts. These are thoughts that are created by our internal thinking centers like the amygdala and limbic system, and they are generated out of fear, and they're intermixed with thoughts that are generated in our cortex, which is the main thinking center of the brain, and that is very rational thinking center. So we get this mixture of thinking that involves rational thoughts, and then involves more amygdala limbic thoughts, which are more fear centered. And the role of that is really important because the role is to keep you safe. So it makes sense that we would produce these automatic thought processes to keep us safe. And, hundreds of years ago, that really had a place because it made us retreat when we had a sense of anxiety was telling us to retreat. We would retreat and it would save us. But nowadays, sometimes these can get out of control. And the one thing about anxiety, it tends to reinforce itself, and that's what makes the spiral of anxiety so hard, is that it reinforces itself very well, because these behaviors cause people to retreat from the anxiety, which further builds the anxiety. And that makes sense because in the wilderness, if we were to experience something anxiety provoking, we wouldn't want to experience that again. So you can see why it would reinforce it if something dangerous happened and we got hurt. Well, we're going to produce a lot of anxiety towards that. But nowadays, we don't have as many of those visceral fears or visceral things we have to look out for because we live in modern worlds, and our brain is still evolved and is still programmed to think that way. So when you're struggling with anxiety, especially high functioning anxiety and clinical anxiety, such as an anxiety disorder, you have to start kind of thinking of becoming conscious. And I think that's the first step, is really to become conscious of how this anxiety, these automatic thoughts, are being developed. And the one thing I wanted to chat about was thinking traps. And these are traps that we don't really realize we get into, and they all kind of make sense. So we'll go through there. But take a look at this website and go through it and see if you do any of these thinking traps. And you won't recognize that you do them until after you've had the thought and you reflect. So this is why a lot of people, especially people who are into cognitive behavioral therapy and counselors, we recommend journaling and writing these down, because once we write them down, we become more aware of them, and we can analyze them. And remember, we can't tell the difference between the anxiety thought processes, these automatic thoughts, and our rational thoughts. Our body doesn't tell the difference unless we are really good at learning how to pick up on these automatic thoughts. So the thinking trap, I'll just go through a couple of them. So the all or nothing thinking, or black and white thinking, that is thinking only in the possible outcomes at either extreme. So kind of going to the worst case scenario. If I take my driver's test, I'm going to crash the car. If I go up and speak in public, I'm going to make myself look really stupid. Those kind of things are that thinking trap, and in the time they feel very real. But once we recognize that, we can start to learn how to kind of reframe those thinking traps, and we can say, well, realistically, I'm probably not going to crash the car in a driver's test. Yeah, I might do poorly on it. That's probably more realistic, but crashing the car is a little less realistic. And when we think about it and we've written it down and we've kind of reframed it, saying, yes, I might make mistakes with my driver's test. I may even fail, but I'm probably not going to crash the car. That is just one example of how you can turn that thinking trap around and make it seem kind of silly. And that really helps reduce the anxiety and prevents you from actually what anxiety wants you to do and run away from the situation, and that only reinforces it. So we'll go through a couple of more thinking traps and you'll get this. So again, the way people work on this is they journal their thoughts, their worries, what's going on maybe at the end of the night, first thing in the morning, and they start to see which of these thinking traps am I doing here, and then they reframe them and just kind of rewrite them out in ways that are more realistic. And when we do that, we kind of let go of the apprehension and anxiety surrounding those thoughts. So it's quite a powerful process when you do it. But the hardest part is really just sitting down and taking the time to do it. And it really depends on if you're struggling with anxiety on the anxiety journey, you do have to be able to be sitting down and kind of reflective. And that sometimes takes a little bit at the beginning. Catastrophizing, I can't even say that word, but that is when you kind of go to the worst case scenario. Overestimating, exaggerating the likelihood that something bad will happen. For example, if I have another panic attack, I'm going to have a heart attack or die. Then we have fortune telling, believing that you can predict the future, but you can't because you don't have a crystal ball. So the reality is we can't predict the future, and sometimes the most unexpected things occur. And most of the times our worries don't come true. Some people have said like 95% of our worries, especially with people who worry or think a lot about the future, don't come true. So when you write them down, you can put them into more realistic context. So an example is I couldn't find a job last summer, so I won't be able to get one this summer. That's few. Or no one is going to talk to me at the party. That's a pretty common one. Oh, the other one is overgeneralization. An example is one friend gets upset at you. I always screw up friendships. I have no real friends. That's a pretty common one. Or we do something and we put ourselves out there and we might mess up a little bit or might not go as well as planned, and we say, oh, I'm never going to be able to learn this, or I'm never going to be able to do this. Well, that's overgeneralizing, and that's a thinking trap. That's not a rational thought that's going on in the brain. That's anxiety speaking. Mind reading. This is the big one that can happen. I'll just go over the examples. I know they are talking about me right now. They are thinking about how weird I look. So if you go to a party or I have bad breath, I think that everybody smells my bad breath. Something like that is mind reading. Or I know they could, which they can't. And everyone is wondering what I'm doing at this party. I know she thinks my gift is lame. Oh, that's a pretty common one. If you're putting yourself out there for a spouse or a partner, and you're not really sure if they will like your gift, and then the thinking trap is, oh, they're not going to like it, and that's mind reading. And then the other one is negative brain filter, and one example is thinking about the question you can't answer on the test rather than the ones you could. All right, so this is something that's very common and a very good trick or practice to do is to sit down when you can with a little journal at certain times, maybe once per week or for 5 minutes. Just make it something really simple and start sitting down and thinking about your worries or thinking about things that happened in the past or the future that are kind of concerning you, and seeing if they are thinking traps. And the best approach is to just write it down, write it all raw and how it comes out. I look stupid today while I did my public speak. And then you would write which thinking trap it was. So you can see maybe overgeneralization. Sometimes there are a couple too. Fortune telling. Actually, overgeneralization is probably catastrophizing. That might have been part of that as well. And then you reframe it and you can say, well, I did my best. I prepared for this public speaking event. And, I made a couple mistakes, but overall I did pretty good. Or I'm proud that I just got over it. And that reframes it, kind of takes that worry away and really sometimes dissolves it. So try that. And if you have the time, this is not part of the course, but it's all on biofeedback. But I think it's important because these are underlying factors that help take away the stress. And I think working on this alongside these activities are really important, especially if you're experiencing more higher anxiety. And of course, when you talk to someone like a counselor or a doctor, anyone in mental health, they know about these and they can help talk you through them and help you realize what you're doing. Because again, most of the time we don't realize what we're doing, and these processes going on, they're all automatic, and we can't see them until someone points them out sometimes. So sometimes we have to work with a counselor and go through these, or work on them at our home and figure out how they are categorized and all that kind of stuff. All right, so that's what we're just had that little chat here. So good luck on your biofeedback and neurofeedback, and we will check in another video.